don't take anything personally. If somebody is having a hard time, if somebody is talking bad about me, it's not a reflection of me, Ershad. It's a reflection of themselves. If you're at peace with yourself, you're not going to talk bad about anybody else. You cannot. As I said, my ex is a good human being. I'm a good human being, but both of us did not make it work. That does not make me a bad person. That does not make him a bad person. Everything I do it with passion. It's okay to fail. It's okay to try your best and not seeing the fruit right away. Just keep on going.
Today we have Durdana Islam, and once we start talking to her, we'll shed light on different aspects of her life and her career, and we'll find out more about her and how she is an inspirational figure from all the way from South Asia, Bangladesh, and for anyone around the world, for any woman. So let's start the conversation. Welcome to Knowing Who You Are, Durdana. How are you today?
Great, and thanks for having me, Ershad.
One of my very close friend, Neha, she mentioned and she shared, first of all, it was a CBC podcast that you have done. When was it done?
It's a CBC information radio. It's broadcasted at 7 a.m. every morning.
Okay.
It was done this year. No, not this year, November, because November is considered as the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So November 2021.
So there you shared your own experience, and when I heard that podcast and knowing you, how much you have achieved over the years after you moved into a new country from Bangladesh, and then everything that you have done, apart from, I mean, we all have our personal stories to share, but that story is so inspirational, and I feel that it's a requisite for every South Asian woman, be it from Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, or even, I wouldn't say South Asia because I wouldn't shed light making people think that it only happens in South Asia. It happens all around the world, but especially for women in general. It's very important to feel empowered, and the resilience that you have showed and how you have overcome everything that you faced in your life. But now you're wearing so many different hats. And on top of that, and for I haven't mentioned one thing, which I'm going to mention now, that you're also a single parent. You have raised two bright children, and which you have done, and that's what we will talk about, and why and how do you manage all those things. But since it's a health podcast and we talk about productivity as well a lot, so I would like to ask you, I mentioned you're an educator, you're an activist, you're also running for an office in the provincial government, and then you're a mother of two children. You're raising them perfectly. So how do you manage all these things in one go?
That's a great question, and this is something I've been asked many times. And what I do is that I just give a smile. And
Okay.
I say that, you know what, you're doing a lot of things too, right, Ashadi? Like you've got so many different talents, and you also wear so many hats. And I know this is the first time we connected. And when I was hearing your story and career journey, I was like, oh my God, I could totally connect with this person. So I can ask you the same questions. How do you do so many things,
I,
right?
I feel you need to be a maverick, isn't it, in life? And also, you have to be very brave because the society tells you one thing, that this is the path you need to follow. And when you find that pathless path, that there's no path, I'm going to make my own, forge my own path wherever I go or wherever I want to go. I think that's one of the ways. But to stay motivated, because definitely there are a lot of pressure. Let's get it out of the way. Since I've been talking about it, and you come from Bangladesh, and especially you and I, we grew up in the same city in Bangladesh,
Yeah,
coincidentally, which you
Chittagong.
didn't know probably, Chittagong. So there we grew up, and you studied computer science. Then now totally, it's a different path you have chosen for yourself where you're working. And if you could mention a little bit the kind of work that you're doing for I mean, if I say that, it won't be enough, I feel.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question. And I would like to answer the question that you answered before about how I manage everything. You've said it
Mm,
very, very nicely. I would add that everything I do it with passion.
mm,
And I put myself fully in it. And I have a to-do list. Every day I have 3 lists that I do. I don't do previously I used to do 10. And I read a lot of self-help books, many
mm.
podcasts, and I'm a hardcore minimalist. And we'll
Okay.
come to that later if we have time. So I only write 3 things, 1, 2, 3. And I'm somebody who always likes to check, right? That this is done, this is done, this is done. So when I have 3 lists and I'm looking at 3 points, oh my God, this is doable, 3 tasks.
Mm,
And as I said, I plan things ahead of time. I have my Google Calendar that I use religiously because previously I would double book myself when I used to use a diary. So that's how I manage my time because my first priority is my health and well being.
mm.
Second is my family, my 2 children and their health and well being. And third is my work, the one that pays my bill. And fourth, I would say all the social work, politics, and everything I do. So
Your
for me,
purpose.
priority wise, yes, exactly. Now, the second question that you asked, I'm going to relate it with the first answer that I gave. When I studied computer science, I did my HSC, like those of you who know it, that
Higher
in
secondary.
Bangladesh, after grade 12, you write that exam. I wanted to study medicine.
Mm,
I wanted to be a physician. I am a PhD. I'm a doctor now, but in a different field, right? I'm not the rich ones. I always joke with my kids, right? So I'm very happy with where I am right now. So the little bit background is that I wanted to be a physician, and my mom is a child specialist in Chittagong. So she became a child specialist when it was totally dominated by male
mm.
physicians. So it would often happen in a room of 100 physicians. My mom is the only female child specialist there. So she would always be busy. So growing up, we grew up in a joint family. My grandmother was there, my aunts and uncles from my dad's side. So I was basically raised by them, and I would always complain how my mother was never there. So
Mm.
one time, this is just a joke. I told my grandma, "Why did you let your son marry my mom? She's never there."
How old
So
were
my
you at that time?
I think 4 or 5, and I was the one who's complaining. So when I wanted to study medicine, my mom literally sat down with me in our Chittagong home with my dad. He said, "You've always complained that I was never there.
Mm,
If you go for being a physician, this is going to happen to your children. Do you want your children to be in the same space where you're in?" I said, "I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do this for my children." And at that time, computer science is in, I would say. And my
mm.
dad said, "Oh, this is the thing," because my aunt, who works in Harvard right now in IT, she said, "This is the field, and Durdana is bright. She should go there." So even me, not knowing what I was getting into, I got into it.
Mm.
Did I like it? No, I hated it. Did I pass with a very good grade? Yes, I did, because I mean, I'm in it, I'll do it. So I used to only do programming for assignment, like with the other friends, they were like, "Oh my God, 10 hours, 12 hours." So I only got good grades. I got the work done. So I graduated a 4 years course way earlier than 4 year. And then I was
Wow.
offered a job even before I finished. I started working at a university at the age of 21. So I was very high achiever. And then I was very proud of where I was going with it. And then at that time, in Bangladesh, coming from a traditional background, I would always tell my dad that I want to go abroad for studies. And my dad would stick to one point, get married and then go with your husband. I'm like, why? And at one point I said, okay, I'll get married and I want to go abroad. And I would say the universe had different plans. My parents found a boy who was living in Chittagong, a businessman,
Mm.
and my mom's friend's son. And you know how arranged marriage is. Those of us who are not familiar, maybe you can give a little bit of background
Well,
on that.
definitely. I mean, since you have already touched upon this, and I feel for people, especially there is altogether a different generation. I feel whenever I look at the teenagers who are growing up at this time, because we didn't even have internet when we were growing up. So we saw a different world, which I call the analog world. I've seen both the analog and the digital, so both of it. And I feel that we have seen the best of both, so we can compare and contrast. I'm not saying something is better than the other. I mean, we both of these have their usefulness and also some of the downsides as well. But as you mentioned about the arranged marriages, so there's definitely no Tinder. So you don't meet someone online on a dating site. So that didn't happen. That's how was the question. But definitely people met someone, probably your neighbor or someone who is on the rooftop you can see through your window. So that's one of the ways. But most of the time that was still scoffed at, and especially for women. And Chittagong, which I feel that's still quite traditional, still up until this day, and probably a bit more now than before, for a woman to choose her own husband or even someone she would say or bring to her family saying that I want to get married to this man, that was unthinkable at the time. So arranged marriage was the go of the day. So most of the time the husband would be chosen for you, and sometimes you just get to see the picture rather than having the opportunity of talking to that person. Probably, I mean, in your case could be different, but most of the time didn't even happen. They say, okay, yeah, I like, or you don't like, no one cares. Main thing is that you're getting married because you've come of age. So that was, I feel that during that time. So even though you were an educated person, you finished, you were a bright student, and you finished earlier, you already in the working sector, you're working, you're self-reliant, but still your husband was chosen for you to a certain extent.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you said it very nicely. And there was another thing, that I was a people pleaser very, very
Mm,
much. I would care about what other people think of me way more what I would want for myself.
mm,
So my sister married her boyfriend. Like they met them at the university, and they were sweethearts. And so that created a lot of issues in the family. My dad was like, "Why are you marrying a batchmate?" A lot of things. But then at the end of the day, the everybody said yes, and it happened. So at that time, I felt a pressure that since my sister chose her own partner, I would give that opportunity to my dad and mom so that they can pick a partner for me.
no, interesting
And
thing, because in my first marriage, I recall there was a big clash because I was studying law at the time, and my ex-wife at the time, she was studying medicine. So and her family was saying, no, a doctor should only get married to a doctor, not to a lawyer,
yep,
and it would never work. So that was a
yep.
huge thing. I remember things have changed, thankfully enough, probably, but still I feel probably in the South Asian households, especially people who are living in abroad or not in the country, I think it's a little bit liberal now in the within the country in Bangladesh. I can't speak for India or Pakistan, but Pakistan I heard stories as well. But I think in the West, who have already migrated to different countries, they are probably a bit too strict still. You got married, then you came to Canada.
No, after my marriage, there were some, like I'm a very free spirited person, and I was married to a very traditional family, and
Mm,
I felt that I didn't belong there. So I would say that time I told my ex that I want to go study abroad, and he said, I
mm,
will only allow you to go if you get a scholarship. And when I got married, I studied in Dhaka. I was working in Dhaka. Dhaka is the capital of Bangladesh, but I'm from Chittagong, the port city, as Ershad is. So I moved to Chittagong after my marriage, and I started teaching at another university at that time. My
mm.
daughter was born. And then he said, okay, let's apply for Canada since you want to study abroad. But the things were getting so challenging for me to live in that household where 7 people were there. And we all know that it's very, very hard to please everybody. But in our culture, if you are the wife of the eldest son, you have to please
So you were living in
everybody.
an extended family.
I was living in an extended family, right? Yeah. So at that time, he said that he will only allow me to go if I get a scholarship. So I applied to Australia, and I was lucky enough to get a very prestigious scholarship from Asian Development Bank.
Mm.
So I went there. Everything was paid for: my visa, a huge scholarship that paid all my tuition. The moment I there, I got a very good amount of check to for my settlement, and I wanted to take my daughter with me. She was 2.5.
What did you
So that
study at that time? Was it
I
computer
studied
science?
environmental management
Ah,
and
okay.
development at ANU.
Why
So
the
ANU is
switch suddenly from computer science to here?
this is a good question, because when I did my computer science, did my minor in management.
Mm.
And I was very interested to know more. So when I got married, and as I said, I'm very ambitious, I told my ex that I want to study. So there was a private university, but it's from Canada, Royal Roads University. They had a chapter there. So I enrolled there and I finished my MBA in executive management from there.
Okay.
So, and I got Vice Chancellor Award because all my grades I got AA plus. So from there, I learned about sustainability in business, and that really captured my interest. So first degree to second degree, it was like, oh my God, I want to know more. It was
Mm.
driven by passion. And I was already asked question, why are you doing this? I said, you know what? That's when I've taken my power back, that I
Mm.
will decide what I want to do. So that's
Mm.
when I applied to Australia. I was very lucky because ADB is very, very selective scholarship. So when I went there, I wanted to take my daughter, and it was challenging. She was 2.5, and it was very, very hard for me because as a mom, my first kid was there, and I most of the days, nights, I would cry to sleep.
Mm.
So, but I had enough support from families that
I'll
I
just
say
go
my
back
children.
to, I'd like to take you there because you said you claim back your power, so to speak. So, would you look at yourself, despite being this bright student and also all the opportunities coming your way, did you feel that as a woman you are vulnerable at some point? You still were?
Oh my God, I was extremely vulnerable because when I got the scholarship, my ex had to speak to his dad and ask permission for his wife to go to abroad. And to me, it
Mm.
didn't make sense because I come from a family where matriarch family, where women
Mm.
has a lot of power. My dad would always joke that my wife is way more educated than I am because my mom would go abroad for higher studies because she's a child specialist. So she
Yeah.
needed all those degrees. But I was married to a family where it's very traditional thinking. And I would keep on asking, did you talk to your dad? Did you talk to your dad? He would like to ignore it. So at one point, I went and spoke to him, and
Mm.
there is a huge hierarchy. So I challenged the hierarchy because I skipped all those things. I went directly, which was not appreciated either. And I said, I'm going. I didn't ask for permission. So that's how I said that I claimed my power back. So the first question was, oh my God, you are a horrible mom because you're leaving your 2.5
Mm.
and going for studies. But I knew my why at that time. So I'm connecting with your show's name because, by the way, I love this name. This is really nice
Thank you.
name, knowing your why. I knew my why was I knew if I stayed with that family in Chittagong, I wouldn't be able to live the life I would like to live, or I envision myself for my daughter as well. I
Mm.
want her to be an independent person where she can decide her own fate, whatever that is.
Being a woman and your daughter, you want the same thing for your daughter because you had been through, and what I listened to initially at the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned that you had been a victim of domestic violence to a certain extent, and you shared that experience with on that podcast. And I would like to shed light on that. It's not the main topic. I'd like to throw some caution in the air for the audience members, but for them to know that no matter what, men or women, we all have our own personal stories, our struggles, and everything, but how we come out on the other side um, and we succeed. And we, what resilience or what mindset that helps us to conquer that anything that we face in life, which are obstacles for us. So in your case, what happened actually? I mean, if you share just shortly, just shed light, and what switched in your mind that told you, okay, Durdana, now you have to claim your power back, not only to go to Australia, but to live your life on your own terms.
I would say my biggest motivation was my daughter. If I didn't have my daughter, I would have still stayed in that family, try my best in a way to adjust, right? When I had my daughter, I decided that this is not the environment I want to raise my daughter. It's
Mm.
not that my in laws were bad. They loved me so much. They treated me as their own. It's just the mentality. My free spirited personality was too much for everybody, even for my ex husband.
The gap
So
between a man and a woman.
very like, yes, I was not a traditional woman. I would
Mm.
always think out of the box, and I would always try to take the path not going through the rules. I'm not saying that I was breaking all the rules. No, I was
Mm.
always thinking outside the box. And then I was told many times that women in our family do not do this, women in our family do not do this. I was tired of hearing that because I come from a matriarch family where I had my own voice that my dad and everybody would value. So I would say going back there, when I went to Australia after finishing my degree, my ex and my daughter came to visit me. That's when I said, when I come back home, I want to leave for Canada. We had the PR already.
Great.
And then I said, if you're coming with me, great. If you're not, I'm going to leave with Shumaila. Shumaila is my daughter's name. She was 4 at that time. I came back. I stayed for a month. I bought my ticket and I said, you're coming or not, it's up to you. So I'm thankful to my ex because at that time, he wanted to stand by my side. And making all his family unhappy, he came with me to Canada. We lived in Toronto at that time. And then when we lived in Toronto, imagine a person who's a businessman, who is an industrialist, and who is a director of a number of organization insurance company, whose dad is very well known in Bangladesh as a businessman. Him leaving everything because he did not have the courage to ask his family for financial support. We started from the scratch in Toronto. So when you start from the scratch, what happens is that my first job was in a call center. And I faced so much racism. Another interview I did in CBC about this topic, where I said, and I'll say it here, one day I was in the call and one person called and said that, I want to speak to somebody who is WHITE. My whole body was shaking. And in a call center, high school graduates were my bosses. So I went there and told him, and he said, oh, take a 10 minutes break and go back.
Yeah, probably you would give the same solution, but the other person he or she wanted to speak with would give the same solution that you're giving, but still it's a demeaning way of saying, oh, because it's you who are not necessarily someone that I want to speak with, you can't give me the solution, but the other person knows better than you.
Yeah, but it wasn't the solution. All I needed to do is, hello, you have reached the Rogers call center.
Oh,
That's all he needed to do,
even
right?
to start with. Wow.
I mean, I knew my work. I knew that really well. So what I would say is that a high school student at that time did not understand the severity of it. So I told him, I'm sorry, I have to take the day off. Because, when you go through racism and when you're treated differently for the way you talk, the way you look, and your skin color, it puts a scar on your soul. It does. Because you don't know how to explain it unless and until someone went through that. They wouldn't understand. And I'm sure in UK and different parts of the world, it happens to immigrants. Yeah. This is something we go through. And I know folks who have changed their name to get a job in the market, in the economy, so that they can support their families. I was even asked to change my last name Islam because Islam is very much related
especially,
to the religion.
On top,
Yeah. So the problem started is that after I had my son, he was born in Toronto, I told him that I'm not going back to that call center. And I was on leave for a year, paid leave for maternity leave, and I kept on exploring different universities for my PhD. So we had to move from Toronto to Winnipeg, where I am staying right now. And then that's when his sisters were in Toronto, so he didn't want to leave. So he was like, let's try next year. I said, I am not wasting my time. So in 2010, when I came here, he also came. So he got another job. I don't use the word survival job, something that is not up to his caliber. And I was doing PhD. I was traveling to conferences. So that's when his ego was hurt badly. I would say it from the broader perspective that he's not a bad person. I'm not a bad person, but we were not a good match. We weren't able to tell because I am somebody who has a goal and mission. I want to go there. Once I reach there, I'll go in a different level. That's how I challenge myself. That's how I grow. And we all know that we grow when we try to dare ourselves outside our comfort zone. So I would do that. And for him, it was very scary, because he wouldn't take the chance to apply for a different job. And he would tell people that, oh, this is Durdana is studying. I want to take care of the kids. And one day I sat down with him. I said, stop saying that. You're just too scared to apply for a job because you may get rejected. So that's when his ego was like, my wife is doing so much. Why am I not? And then he's people saying those things, it just hurts. And to me, it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
So things started getting bad. He had anger issues. And at one point he used to abuse me from even 1 week after my marriage. I don't want to get there, but I stick to it because of the stigma that we have. Being divorced is something in our society, I would say, in Bangladesh and to South Asian society, all blames come to the lady, girl, woman, wife. because she could not do enough to please her husband or the family.
Exactly.
There's no problem with the man because the man is the guardian of the
And
woman.
the other abuse you start getting at workplace and other men around when there's a single woman or divorced woman, and everyone feels that okay, she might be someone who's a little easier. So there are a lot of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also in Bangladesh, right now things have changed. If you want to rent a house, if you're single with 2 kids, they're not going to let you rent. So there's a lot of things. And for me, I didn't want to bring shame to my family. So that's why I stayed. But when the abuse came to my son, the next day I left.
So I would like to ask you this question now. You said your reason, your why was your daughter to start with.
Correct.
So
Correct.
there are people probably living in a household and also who are not as empowered, which you already had been with your scholarship, your studies, and what you have been doing. Someone who's totally dependent on their husband, say for example, and I have known probably or heard of women in the society, especially in Bangladesh, they know literally that their husband is being unfaithful and they're doing things behind her back, but they wouldn't say anything because they know that if they get divorced, first of all, the issue you mentioned, that they will be in trouble being a single woman. They would be nowhere. The society would start blaming her for or blaming them for all the wrongdoing on their part. Everything would come on them, on their shoulder. That's one thing. But also, they're not self reliant, how they would support themselves. And even their family would look at them as burdens. So, that's one thing when a woman is like that. And on top of that, when they don't have a reason like you had, your daughter. So what would you suggest for them? Since I know that you have been working for women who are at the moment being in some troublesome situations. So how would you ask
This
them
is
to
a
do?
very good question. Right now, I'm counseling some folks, even from Bangladesh, when they hear my story, the podcast you listen to. People reach out to me. I've got a public profile, Dr. Durdana Islam on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So I give them time. I speak to them. One of the ladies is trying to come to Canada, and her parents are not supportive. So I gave her some directions, connected her with an immigration lawyer, that these are the ways, and you can do this. So there are 3 things I would say for this situation. One is that it's very important that we provide our children a happy home. If I am constantly fighting with my ex, there's always tension in the household. And then kids grow up in a place where they think that parents fighting, arguing is normal, which is not normal, which is not healthy. And kids grow up in a very insecure environment. And if there is abuse there, they're witness of the abuse. And that is something that stays with their life forever. So first, that is the thing I would say, providing a happy and healthier family. And respect is the minimum. Let me repeat, respect is the minimum. The first day when your partner becomes disrespectful, please set boundaries, because if we don't set boundaries, it's going to increase. And I know even for me to learn that, being educated, being somebody who is highly motivated, it took a long time for me to set boundaries, and I still struggle with that. Second thing I said, like, the first thing is that understanding that even if you're divorced, you will be happier. Are you happy in that relationship? If you're not, there is something you need to do about it, because your happiness is very important. When you're happy, when I am happy, my kids are happy because they're seeing me happy. Like, if you ever come to Winnipeg and visit my home, you'll see that my home is filled with love, because that's what we have in the household, and that's what we practice. We hug each other, we say we love each other. Second thing I would say is that not having a job, not having the support of your family, the stigma and everything, trust me, your children are way more important than all these things. You can fight everything, trust me. Look at Begum Rokeya. I'm saying it in the context of Bangladesh. When she wanted to study, she was the first pioneer who started the movement that women can go to school and study. And we all know about it. She came from a traditional background as well. If she can move all those barriers, like our ancestors broke a lot of barriers. That's how I'm here. I'm here, not only I am here, I am representing my ancestors. I carry those knowledge in my gene. Imagine if you're not breaking the cycle, do you want the same lifestyle for your daughter? If not, do it right now. You can do it in so many different ways. If you're staying in Bangladesh, connect with a social worker, connect with somebody who is working in that field or filled with battered women. Connect with folks. If you want to connect with me, feel free to go to my public profile and connect with me. If you want to come to Canada, I'll be happy to connect with you with the right folks if you want to study. Third thing I would say is go through counseling.
Mm.
Counseling is very, very important. And I haven't been to Bangladesh for a long time, that there are counseling facilities available in Bangladesh as well. My kids, it's been 10 years since I got divorced. My kids have been going through therapists for the last 10 years, and they're still continuing. And they are very healthy, secure, and happy children. Let me repeat, they're secure, they're very confident. My daughter just turned 18. She knows exactly what she wants.
Mm.
And I treat her as an individual. I treat my son as an individual. Instead of telling them what to do, I hear their views. Sometimes I don't like their views, and I always say that my happiness is not your responsibility, it's my responsibility. Because in our culture, if you're a wife, oh my God, your husband's being happy is your responsibility. No, that's a total different topic. I don't want to go. So the third thing that I was saying is therapy is very, very important to heal. Because if I am still in a crisis phase, I am going to make decisions, make choices that's not going to be helpful.
Mm.
Sometimes women coming from this battered situation finds a man
Can I
who is
interrupt and say
again in the same
something?
pattern.
Add that, because I don't want people to watch it and say that, oh, she's saying that it's not my responsibility to make my husband happy. We would like to add this, that it's the responsibility of both
Oh,
parties.
absolutely,
It's a,
absolutely.
I mean, you
But
can't say it's only the women that who are responsible.
no,
So it has to
no,
come from both sides.
yeah, I would say yes, you're right. That is the broader concept. But when you're in an abusive relationship, it's all on you.
Yeah.
That's where I was coming from. But
Mm.
in a healthy relationship, the way you said, it's a mutual and both of you work together. But when you're in an abusive relationship, the hierarchy is like this: the man is there, wife is there. So the
Definitely.
wife is the submissive one, and wife is the one who's only responsible. From that perspective, I came,
Yeah.
even for the audience to
Now, also, I'd
understand.
like to add that definitely any change is scary. So, whenever they feel like taking a risk, because risk is just a window of probability, you're thinking, so a good thing can happen, bad thing can happen. So, but uncertainty, it's an emotion, it's a sense that you feel inside. But the moment you think about, normally as humans, we don't think about varieties in life. I'm not talking about variety in terms of different men, different women. I'm saying the opportunities you have in life. And this is why what you have done in your life, studying computer science and where you are now, and what I have done studying law, then I have moved on to a lot of different things and I'm still doing things. So I feel it's just the thirst for variety in life that makes life meaningful. And you feel that, and you also become, every time you achieve something new, you become confident that, okay, I'm capable of that. That's my self worth. So I feel when someone is stuck in a position, be it a man or a woman in a relationship, because men do get abused too.
Oh, of course. We just don't talk about it, and it's
Yeah,
more stigmatized. I
exactly.
know men who get bitten by their wives. Trust me, not from our community. From our community is like, oh my God, we don't talk about it because we are
I mean,
men.
you didn't even have to lay a finger on the man, even can abuse someone mentally, day and the torment day after day. But I just want to clear the air for people suddenly, because sometimes we pick on something and we feel, okay, yeah, that's why this single woman is trying to teach every other woman, okay, come out of your relationship and it's not your responsibility to make your husband
No,
happy.
no,
But where you're
no.
coming from, I just wanted to clarify that point so
Thank
people
you
would know.
so much, Ershad, for doing that. Thank you. I really appreciate that because I was coming from perspective of a divorced woman and a thriver of domestic violence. That's the way I was coming from because it's not healthy. So you don't work
Yeah.
together as a team.
So, Dudana, one thing I have come across, that you are also a highly rated teacher as well by your students. They have rated you very high. I think it's 4.6 out of 5 that your teaching
How do you
style.
know that?
I have to do my research for people. So, I feel it comes to become a motivational teacher. Definitely your work ethic, you're definitely passing on something to your students as well. So what's your work ethic and your productivity as well? Let me add another question to it, because you said you have to-do list of just 3 items. So do you always get to finish them? Let us know. And what's the idea behind it, if you could share both these questions together?
Okay, thank you so much. And you've done a good research, because rate your professor is, you can rate your professor, like you'll see it from anywhere in the world. It's
Yeah.
online. We don't even know which students wrote it. So it's not that they're always good comments. They're, I mean, mixed of both. I'm very thankful that I get really high review from my students, and some courses I've got 100% reviews, and the students would go and ask for me to teach. And it was a master's course. I taught food security and climate change,
Mm,
and they were all teachers. They were doing the master's course to be teachers. Like
okay.
they're teachers, but they wanted to improve themselves so that they can teach in a higher level. Uh, Number one thing I would say is that, first of all, is that the topic that you're teaching,
Mm,
this is an advice for teachers. The topic that you are teaching, you have to be interested about that topic. If you're not interested, you're not teaching from your heart.
mm,
You're just teaching because it's a profession and it pays your bill. Number two, I would say, is that put yourself in your students' shoes. The teachers that you liked when you're a student, try to model them and try to follow some of the good qualities that you liked.
mm,
For me, one of the biggest qualities that in a teacher I loved was building relationship, getting to know your students in a personal level. Trust me, I have students who would come in my room, cry because they broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. I have students who come with issues in their personal life. I have students who come personally tell me that I was homeless. I was in homeless, and now I do 4 jobs to finish my degree. In the
mm,
class, you will never know. And there's another course I taught, social geography, where we talk about lots of sensitive topics. And I always set a boundary: whatever happens in the class stays in the class, and no judgment. So there he opened up that he was another student. He was in 5 foster homes
mm,
because nobody wanted him. His parents abandoned him the moment he was born. He was adopted as a foster child because nobody wanted to keep him because he was very naughty. And he said, "You're the first prof in my 4 years of studies here who gave me that space to open up." At the end of the class, I said, "Do you mind if I give you a hug?"
wow.
So, number one is be interested in your topic. Number two is that build a good relationship with your students.
Connectivity.
Number three is, if there's a topic that the students are finding challenging, give that space and try
Mm,
to be flexible. Like, don't just be like, "Oh no, this is my way or highway."
mm,
In my class, it's a more democratic way I teach. Like, I'll say, "Hey, what do you think?"
mm,
Or what do you think would be a good way of dealing with it? And I usually give them some exercises, especially apart from studies. Like number 4, I found it very challenging teaching online. So I sat down, I meditated. Then I said, I always started the class by asking, "How are you feeling?" And I would start with how I'm feeling. I said, "Oh God, I had a big argument with my son in the morning. He didn't want to do this." So I'm being personal there.
mm,
So I am a human being like all of the students in the class. And 90% of the students were parents, so they could relate with it. And then they
exactly.
will share their experience. And somebody said, "I was very sad because I went through a miscarriage a month ago." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And she started crying. And I said, "Can I talk to you after the class?" Just to provide that safe space. And I asked, "Are you seeing a counselor?" This is very important because I'm not a counselor.
Mm,
My experience is working with a couple of counselors for the last so many years that I do, right? Um, so these are the places I would say, these are the top points I would say is very important as a teacher. That's how I feel. The fourth point, when I said that, talking about feelings, because that's not the way we were raised.
mm,
Nobody asked us when we were students, like, "How do you feel?" What is feeling? We didn't even
exactly.
know growing up what is feelings. If you haven't studied, there's a ruler, you're going to get punished. Like all
Yeah.
physical abuse, bullying. Oh my God. So that was normal. It
I
doesn't
used to
work
be
this.
scared in my primary school. One of my house tutor, the moment he would, I know that it's time for him to come. I feel sorry for the younger version of me. Every time I look back, I would literally would have a heart attack that he's coming. So if I summarize the thing you have said, I think you mentioned connectivity. and not to take people at their face value, because there's something behind that picture you see in front of you, and don't judge the book by its cover. And also your work ethic, which it seems like how you take it seriously because you know your subject and you're connected to your subject too. And it's almost like there's a quote I really like: when you play for the name that's on the front of the jersey, then people would remember the name at the back or on the back of the jersey. So that's really interesting. And connection, I think, is important, be it in your professional life, in your personal life, and being a good listener. This is also very important. So you touched upon everything, and we can. I think people should. Yeah, and also whenever we see, and I remember that our teachers used to say, as you said, that okay, he's behaving in a way quite disruptive in the class. Okay, this is a bad student, and get him out of the class. And I've seen one of my classmates. He failed, I think, during his 8th grade. Then he ended up, there's an accident that happened in his life when his father was dying. He made him to promise that okay, and I think he just did good result because he wanted a motorbike, and his condition was that if you can get me good grades, you'll get your motorbike. And for that he got into that habit. So that's how we build our habit as well. He could never get out of that, and he became an engineer from Buet, one of the
Wow.
prestigious institute of Bangladesh. Definitely we talked about how you balance your responsibilities, but you are an educator, I already mentioned. You are a mother of 2 children, and also, you said you have some projects for vulnerable women. So, what kind of projects you're planning at the moment, if anything is undergoing, or you're planning for future, if you'd like to share with people?
I would say, first of all, when I was going through my divorce, I was in a place where I thought, you know what? I always wanted to stay with my ex because I wanted my kids to grow up with a dad.
Mm.
That's when I went through a therapist who was a parenting coach. So she said, it doesn't matter. You don't need two parents to raise your secure children. And I'm like, oh my God, my eyes were like, okay, I need to do this. So that's when I kind of knew that when I meet all my kids' needs, you don't need two parents to do that. If I'm doing it, my kids are very secure and confident. Trust me, if you meet them, you will know. Very, very confident, and they are very secure and comfortable in their own self, which I was not growing
No,
up.
you
Many
definitely,
of
if
us
you
are
are
not.
like that for your students, they're your children.
Yes. And then they would say that, remember, growing up is like you're always being compared with someone else who's doing so and so good.
Mm.
Why did you get 98? What happened to those two numbers? And I'm like, really? As you said, your friend's story. What I would say is that's when, after 10 years of my divorce life, I decided to empower other people.
Mm.
So I took the course myself. So once I took the course, I did a class with 6, 7 Bangladeshi mothers. And I said, I'm going to teach because this is a course that people usually do as a private practice. They'll charge money, you pay for the course, and it's good amount of money. I said, I want to do it for free. And the review of the course was so great that I was like, I want to do it again, but I didn't have the time to do it. So that's one way I was looking at it, that if you're battered, if you're in an abusive relationship, if you know how to deal with your kids' emotional need
Mm.
and how to keep them more confident, you need to work on yourself, and then you can give. Like, you can never pour from an empty cup. We know that.
True. Yeah.
So taking care of your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health is very, very important. I cannot emphasize that more. Second, what I did was, people were coming to me for different kind of counseling, and like, what do I do? So I have connected to one woman, and she went to a shelter, and she said, Durdana, why did you send me there? Because shelters here are very much catered to Western lifestyle.
Mm.
I would say that following, there's no cultural component to it. I myself stayed in a shelter. There were two single beds, bunk beds. I stayed 2 nights there. I stayed with my two kids in a small bunk bed. And at night, this lady opened the door with a torchlight to see, make sure you're there. And it was so much traumatic. There were women who were coming from many different backgrounds, screaming, and their bodies were like marked with bruises and stuff,
Mm.
and crying. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a traumatic environment. I cannot keep my kids here. So I left after 2 days. There's a different story about that. I don't want to get into details. So that's when I started working with Islamic Social Service Association. I sit on their board. And now I'm representing Manitoba, the province, to build the first ever Muslim women's shelter in Winnipeg.
Wow, congratulations.
And thank you. We're opening our door in September. And right now, the process where it's at is that we have got the funding and we're doing the work with Sakina Homes from Ontario. They have 5 shelters. And during COVID time, they were working with women from Winnipeg. So many calls because they want to leave their abuser, because what can be the best situation? You're stuck with an abuser in the same house. That's the best situation for an abuser, to abuse their partners. And then they said they wanted to leave, but there's no shelter here. And Winnipeg, Manitoba, has the highest number of domestic violence in entire Canada. So there is a big space that needs to be
Is it
catered.
all across different communities or just a particular community?
Oh, it's overall in general.
Okay.
So for Muslim community, I felt that this is my need because I'm in a different stage in my life. I would like to empower other women. And this shelter will have like halal food, we'll have a prayer room. And then I was talking to the people that we're going to have an art therapy because I paint. That's a hobby that I have. So all these ways of having women, as you said, when they don't have work, how they come out. And these people, these women can stay as long as they want. It's not a Band-Aid solution. So once you get a job, once you can stand on your own feet, once you're out of your trauma, connected with your therapist, that's when you leave. In Sakina Homes, one woman stayed 3 months with their kids because she wasn't comfortable. She wasn't confident to leave. But the shelter where I left, the moment my ex was arrested by the police, I had to leave the next day. And I was literally crying. Nobody in Winnipeg knows I'm in an abusive relationship because I had the face. I'll put makeup, I'll wear expensive saris, but I was abused, physically abused 1 hour before that and going to parties because that's how I survived, right? Different switches. So, and focused on my PhD. So this is one project I'm working on. I work in the field of climate change. I'm the program manager of Manitoba's climate action team. So I decided we work with 5 Indigenous communities, 5 rural communities. So I decided that I live in an urban community. Why don't we have a climate action team here? In 57 provincial riding in Manitoba, I live in Waverley. I kicked off the first ever climate action team in an urban riding in June. I did a video, I posted in my social media, and I said, this is Waverley Climate Action Team. We're having the first meeting in June 7th, come over. People in Twitter connected with me saying that I live in a different place, can I come? I said, of course you can come. First couple of people came, we sat down, I said, can you be the executives? So now I'm working with my team, and every single month on 7th, we have an event.
So as we know that you're running for an office in the provincial government, so would you have any projects or any plans that you'd like to extend services similar to this, all the services that you're doing, especially for vulnerable women, even in Bangladesh, where I feel that there's a dire need? Definitely, there are NGOs and non-governmental organizations that they're probably helping. But do you see that that's enough, or do you feel the need that there should be something more catered to the needs to particular areas?
Okay, Bangladesh, there's a huge need. Fighting the stigma, people needs to talk about it. For me, even it took a long time to tell people that I'm divorced. What's your marital status? I'm divorced. It took a long time because in my head, divorced, oh my God, it's a big thing. No, I'm very proud of where I am. And I always say I'm a mom. So you need to talk about it. There needs to be programs to talk about it. There needs to be people who will sit and talk about like the overall health that gets and well-being gets impacted by that. We need to have people who are trustworthy that you can talk about. For instance, in Bangladesh, you speak with somebody, that's a whole gossip, the whole community knows. And if you say, don't say it, that's the first thing people will call and say that, hey, don't say it, this is what's happening. So having professional therapists is very, very, very important, and they should be accessible. When I get elected, I have also spoken with Dolly Begum. She's the first ever elected official in Canada who's from Bangladesh origin. And she is the MPP in Ontario. That is, like in Manitoba, we say MLA. in provincial legislature, and in Ontario we say MPP. So I have collaborated with, I speak with Dolly on a regular basis about a couple of projects. So this is where I feel both of us can coordinate and have a project where we can provide funding and training on therapists, how you can provide this help based on the cultural context. The board where I am in Isa Islamic Social Service Association, that's where Auntie Shahina, she's the executive director, she provides counseling based on the religious side.
Yeah.
I don't. The last thing I would want for my worst enemy is to go through divorce. Not everybody can deal with it in the same way. And if you have children, and when you have to go through divorce, you know that you have tried your best, and this is the way you are deciding to go. So in our culture, and also from the religious perspective, it is told that you try your best. How you can do it, bringing both of them together, couple counseling. There's so many ways in the Western world we get it, but not in Bangladesh. So that is very important to provide that space. And I think when I get elected, there will be many different ways I can.
So your life is shaped with this idea of service, which is very important. That brings the, I think, the higher level of happiness in life, and which I have felt, and I believe in that. And that's why Knowing Who You Are, the podcast. I mean, it's not for me, it's not really bringing me anything other than meeting amazing people like you, and also through you and your experience and the things you're doing, we can bring something to the people who will be watching it. So apart from this, so everything that you're doing, the service is for others. So what else do you do that is meant for yourself when you have a moment for yourself, that you find time to do something for yourself? What do you do? Do you have any hobbies or anything?
I do have hobbies. I do outdoor activities a lot. In Winnipeg, Winnipeg is one of the coldest cities in Canada. Like we have below 40s in
Oh
winter.
God.
So I skate, I do cross country skiing in winter. In summer, I go for kayaking and I go for long hikes. And I try to be busy in different kind of activities because that's how I take care of my mental health and
Not to
mental
forget the
health and
painting behind you. We should.
oh wow. So this is a painting my daughter and I did. We were in arguing and we stopped talking for a couple of days. So I went to, we paint, three of us paint in our house. I went to a shop and got this big canvas, and we have a studio in the basement. We went there. I said, let's paint. So we just picked colors and we were painting. At one point, we started laughing and talking. So this painting, we named it as Joy. And this is a series that we have. The last one we did, my daughter and I, this was the first ever painting. We both did it together. The second one we have is called Peace, because we both were in a peaceful mind, and even the colors are so peaceful. I can send a picture for you. You can see. And we want to do another one that's going to be Chaos.
Wow.
We haven't started that yet.
No, that's really interesting, because I was almost about to ask you what this is about. But like a good poetry, you shouldn't want to know what the painter was thinking, like a poet, what he's thinking. You should just see how the words are constructed or how the colors they're aligned. So it's perfect. When you said that, it's an expression of joy. That's all.
It is because
yeah.
we were able to come together in a common point.
So you have a studio, you said,
in the basement.
In the basement. So amazing, Durdana. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, trust me, I wanted to shed light on different things. Anytime you start talking about a topic, I feel, okay, I should know a little bit about that. But I know that you have managed this time for me today for the podcast as well. You're supposed to go to Vancouver, I think, in a couple of hours.
Tonight.
So
Yeah.
still you made time. Thanks for that. So before we end the podcast, is there any simple nugget of wisdom, if you'd like to share, that you felt that you always hold close to your heart in your life, that whatever you do, wherever you go, that's one thing that you always remember? Is there anything like that that works for you, you'd like to share?
Yes. There's one thing that I really strongly believe in. And this is a part of the speech of Theodore Roosevelt. And he said that in France in 1910. This is the name of the speech is A Man in the Arena. So I always feel that I am the person in the arena, and I will say that. The It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or how the doer of deeds could have done them better. It is the man, the credit belongs to him who is actually in the arena, who stumbles violently, whose face is marred by dust, by sweat, by blood, who comes short again and again, who at the end, if he wins, can taste high achievement, who at the end, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly.
Wow, great.
I am in the arena, you're in the arena, and many of us who are listening to this are in the arena. So let's keep on fighting and daring greatly.
I think the first
By the
question I
way,
asked you at the beginning of this podcast, I think we found the answer now. Being comfortable with failure. That's the
correct.
key to your success.
Correct. Like I am now daring greatly to run against present minister for the next election. That's on October 3rd, 2023. Many people said, are you sure what you're doing? You know what you're doing? I said, I know exactly what I'm doing. I do a lot of social work. I work in the community and I do those things for free. And if that becomes my profession, I can do more. I'll have more resources. Yeah. And I believe in the way you said, I believe in servant leadership. That's how Mahatma Gandhi did. That's how you say our father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman did. That's how many of the great leaders, if you look at Barack Obama here, they are the one who has believed in that. And the term that is coined by servant leadership, I really, really love that. So a leader should build a team. A leader should be a true leader, will build more leaders, will empower more people. And when something successful happens, it's the credit of my team, not me. When something wrong happens, I am the one who's in the front and saying, you know what, it's my responsibility, not my team members. So that's something I try to practice. And a leader is somebody who has to keep on learning all the time. I listen to podcasts. I read a lot of books. I have some favorite authors that I read, and I have a target this year that I want to read 24 books. I don't know. I haven't.
What's your favorite book at the moment, if you'd like to
Right
share?
now, I'm reading the book of Brené Brown. I have it, in fact, in my table right now, Dare to Lead.
I was just about to say that probably. I was like, Dare to Lead.
Really? And that's where I got the quote. And I felt that I could connect with that quote anytime. And before I go, the last thing I would say is that I remember you asked me the 3 lists that I have points. Am I able to do it every day? No. Sometimes it happens that I'm not able to do a single thing. So there's again another book I read where it says that there are 4 points in life that you need to follow. One is that be impeccable with your words. Always use kind words. Whatever you say, be kind to each other. Communicate using kind words, even when you're speaking to yourself. Sometimes we say, oh my God, I'm such a failure. No, I've got challenges and I'm trying my best to overcome those challenges. Like even changing the words in a way your brain hears, because word has power. Second thing is that don't assume, always ask questions. I can assume that, oh, my partner is thinking that, or maybe he's doing this. Ask that question. Where have you been? What was going on? Provide that space, right?
Communication.
Yes, that is. And the third thing is very interesting that I always like is what others do is not about you. Don't take anything personally. If somebody is having a hard time, if somebody is talking bad about me, it's not a reflection of me, Ershad. It's a reflection of themselves. If you're at peace with yourself, you're not going to talk bad about anybody else. You cannot. As I said, my ex is a good human being. I am a good human being, but both of us did not make it work. That does not make me a bad person. That does not make him a bad person. And the fourth thing, it's last but not the least, is always do your best. Your best will be different in each day. One day, my best is, oh my God, I do 3 things and I would pick up a couple of things from the next day. One day I'm so feeling bad, demotivated. I cannot even do one thing. I go for a long walk. I forgive myself. It's okay, Durdana. It's okay to fail. It's okay to try your best and not seeing the fruit right away. Just keep on going. You have a
Right.
vision. You might see that now you're seeing darkness in that vision. Trust me, I wanted to give up my PhD so many times. I was going through divorce, I had kids, financial hardship, everything. But one thing I realized, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. And you grow through that. Don't you realize that? You
Yeah.
grow through that challenges.
Yeah, that's the growth now that I'm comfortable now. Because there used to be a time when things would happen, I would get so nervous. I said, "Oh my God, what's the way out?" So your how you're finishing up, it reminded me of this quote by Rabbi Hillel. He said that if I'm not thinking about myself, who will there be to do that? And if I'm just thinking about myself, that's all I'm doing. Who am I?
I
So
love it. I love that. Do you mind to send the quote to me? I
definitely,
love
I'll
that
I'll
quote.
do that because it encompasses the idea of service at the same time love for yourself, which we most of the time forget. So Durdana, we have reached the end of this podcast with you. Amazing time I had. I was just listening to Spellbound. So where can people reach you if they want to access anything that you're doing? They want to know more about your work. How can they find you or
My
anything you
email
have?
address is dr.durdanaislam@gmail.com. So Dr. Durdanaislam@gmail.com. Again, dr.durdanaislam@gmail.com. My Twitter handle is Dr. Durdana Islam. My Instagram handle is Dr. Durdana Islam. My Facebook, that is my public profile, that is called Dr. Durdana Islam. So you can find me in any of this. And I am very active in LinkedIn as well. If you want some professional advice, how to come to Canada, do your PhD or master's, you can always connect with me. In my LinkedIn profile is Dr. Durdana Islam. What I would say is that since I'm one person, I won't be able to answer you right away. And please do not take that personally. It's not that just because you're not hearing from me, that doesn't mean that I'm ignoring you. Please don't take it personally. I'm saying it. And I'm planning to do some videos about how you can come to Canada for PhD and masters, because I've been asked by, I think, 10 people now, and I've spoken
Okay.
with two, spending 2 hours of time. And I'm like, okay, how can I do it in a more effective way?
So Durdana, on that note today, thanks a lot for making the time. And I hope you have a safe journey today, later part of the day.
After 2 hours.
After 2 hours. Yeah. No, definitely you're a very dynamic person. I feel that you'll have all the energy to do that. And then after reaching there, you will spread some more light among people. So have a good
Thank
day.
you. Thank you so much for having me, Ershad. And it was really good talking to you and getting to know you. I hope it's the beginning of a great friendship.
Definitely. It's our pleasure. Thank you.